If you thought the banking crisis was over, you're listening to the wrong news. I'm going to show you what's happening today. It is becoming concerning because this has started a domino effect. They are going to paper over this and create an enormous amount of inflation, despite what the deflationists have told you. And I am going to give you some insight as to what will happen to you today. Let's begin. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you, beginning with this. Biggest US banks wrote off $3.4 billion in bad consumer loans. Lenders' consumer loan write-offs jumped 73% in the first quarter. Still, the US consumer is in great shape. Yeah, absolutely, right? They're able to maximize their debt today. And credit card companies will give more, and you'll have the banks lending more because the belief is that this is only temporary. And it looks like that absolutely could be the case. Why not? I mean, you can kick the can down the road. Bank of America joined its largest rivals in setting aside more reserves as a growing number of consumers couldn't keep up with their loan payments, even as executives dialed down fears of a looming crisis. No, there is no crisis here. It's all good. Just make sure to keep your head in the sand. A lot of this information here you have to read between the lines. If we take the headlines, if we look at the stock market itself, I mean, just look, it's up. Every day it's up. You do not look at that to understand what's actually happening. We need to know the truth. And we are seeing part of the story in this article. Would you like to know more? Let's get into it right here. Wells Fargo tapped the high-grade corporate bond market on Monday, the first large US lender to sell bonds since the collapse of SVB. What does this mean? Well, essentially, they needed some cash. And that's how big companies can do it. You and I, we need to borrow, we need to beg, we need to get a cash advance, all these different things. But when you are a huge company, you can go into the debt market, issue debt out of thin air, and you can, create that money that you need right away to fulfill your obligations, creating liquidity for yourself. Because why? It's because they had it, but they wanted some extra for a rainy day? No, because they're in trouble. And that's what they do as long as, investors feel confident in their ability to pay it back and that they won't go bankrupt. They'll continue to do this. And right now, the moral hazard is just out of control. What am I talking about here? We've basically got this blanket guarantee that any company and any deposit is going to be bailed out. No matter how much risk you take, no matter how big of a problem you encounter, you're gonna be bailed out. So why wouldn't these banks, you gotta think about this for a sec. Why wouldn't they take the maximum amount of risk with your deposits? Think about that. If you're that company, Daddy Fed and Daddy Government are going to bail you out if you get in jail. Well, then you're just going to commit that crime, right? You're just going to do that dirty deed because you know that you're going to be okay at the end of the day. And so that's what's happening. That is occurring here and now. So the risks are beyond imagination. When we talk about things being okay and kicking the can down the road, yeah, you can invest the way that you do, but realize that at some point you are encountering these crises that, you can't just, I'll dollar cost average and I'll be okay. There's something going on here, and if only more people understood what's happening, well, I think they would start to wake up. Let me show you. Brookfield defaults on $161 million office building debt. I told you that this would come. And we are seeing some of the examples. I brought another one up in a previous video a few days back, but we're seeing this. Big companies, Brookfield's massive. And so they are now defaulting. What does that mean? Why? Well, they cannot pay their debt. Do you understand? They can't pay it back. The tenants aren't there. The payments aren't coming through. And as a result, just like with the building, I posted it on my Twitter, where I said about the Microsoft building. Imagine a building, I forget how many stories it was, let's say 20-story building. The entire thing empty and abandoned. And that's the way it goes. They're saying, hey, Workers, you work from home. We're going to split people around where they need to be in these office buildings. We don't need 10 buildings anymore. Maybe we only need 8 buildings, something like this. But what happens to those other 2 buildings? Well, it's hard to find people to just occupy that much space. And so we get this. The debt attached to all this commercial real estate is a problem. When I did the video about a credit crunch, about tightening, I saw comments saying, nope, not true. But of course, you, the individual, you're not going to experience what the general, especially on the commercial side, is dealing with. Okay, you can actually look at it. As soon as there's any worry, the credit markets tighten. You don't experience that. Okay, individuals occupy nothing of the total. Okay, when you look at you as an individual compared to the total investment out there, it's nothing. Okay, it's literally it has nothing to do with you. And so when we see it on the bigger scale, the wider scale, on the commercial level, well, we know that there are problems. And I showed you the data and the stats that back that up. And that means the economy is having a direct impact on the economy. Directly seeing this now today. And of course, it does affect people in some way when you increase interest rates to the way they did. Americans go deeper in debt as they use buy now, pay later apps for groceries. So it's not to buy the latest iPhone or whatever, whatever's cool these days. With inflation squeezing budgets, more consumers are turning to instant credit apps to make ends meet. So you don't need to get your credit card out these days. No, you buy it now, you pay later. But like I'm saying, it's to buy groceries, food. Now that's very worrisome, and this is something that a lot of these apps are charging considerable interest rates. So maybe they've already maxed out their credit cards. Okay, we've got trillions in credit card debt, and using these on top of that is scary. Auto loans, as we'll show you right here, have become a problem as well. Subprime firm U.S. Auto Sales temporarily closes dealerships. It's just temporarily, don't worry about it. U.S. Auto Sales, a car dealer that caters to consumers regardless of their credit history, aka those with bad credit, has temporarily closed its dealerships as pressures in the auto market rapidly mount. But we're told everything's fine. We were told it's going to be okay. And we were told that everything was steady and stable. But that's not the case. And we see that right here. Different things are popping up. I do not, let me be very clear, because I see these comments every day. I am not predicting a catastrophic collapse where it's going to be, something to the effect of, this massive deflation, all these, no, it's quite the opposite. It's quite the opposite. They are going to, and intentionally, devalue the currency by trying to print an enormous amount of money beyond anything we've seen before. That's what I'm saying. Please realize this. And what does the best in these circumstances? You stayed until this far into the video. Thank you for being here. You want to know more about that? Stick with me. I will tell you in a moment. But you got to understand the problems. What does the best during inflationary times? What do you think? Okay, talk about that here. The bond market just sounded the alarm on U.S. default risks, and a cataclysmic debt ceiling crisis could hit next month. I do not foresee that. I have said that over and over again. The debt ceiling just gets raised each and every time. They can use that to get clicks and views and so on, but we know the drill here. They just ultimately wait till the last second. And why do they do that? It's because they can squeeze things in that they never could have before. But a lot of people they just don't realize that. But besides the point, you need to squeeze a bill that's too massive to read at the very last second for obvious reasons. You got special interests that are going to take advantage of that. So that's what happens here. Your politicians don't have your best interests at heart. It doesn't matter what side of the spectrum you're on at all. You really got to be aware of that. You can say some are better than others, but whatever. Look, and by the way, the bond market has been flashing signals for a while. So it's not just right now, but that's the point. Japan's insurers plan to sell foreign debt, flashes market warning. So again, Same situation whether you look at this in the United States, you can see that in Canada, in China, in Japan, all these places, they're having issues. Why? It's the same thing. They increase interest rates, and markets are desperate to rely on very low interest rates. And Japan, while still having super low interest rates, they need it to be lower because the economy is slowing down. They've got the worst demographics. They're unwilling to admit their mistakes. And so here we have it. They need to go negative, 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 print a whole lot of money. Investors will flee. And eventually Japan will be a place that you can visit like a museum where there won't be any people there. There won't be any substance there. It's just going to be a tourist spot for people to check out. Look, there was once millions and millions of people here, but they were unwilling to admit their mistakes. And so they printed themselves into oblivion. Good luck. Good luck with that. US government's fiscal mid-year. Check this out. Record tax collections, more money than ever before coming in. It's like as if you, the individual, made more money. Your salary went from $80,000 to $100,000. But guess what? They've still got a huge deficit because you spent let's say $10,000. That's what the government is doing. Do you think that's responsible? Okay? If that was your child, what would you do? Your child made 100 grand somehow and they spent 110. What would you do about that? Would you say, all right, time to take the credit card away, time to take your bank access away, you know that buy now, pay later app? Yeah, we're gonna delete that. Or would you say, go ahead, have fun? No, of course, you're gonna be responsible. Hopefully you'd be responsible about that. But the government isn't. They're not doing that. And I just want to show you how they're the haves and the have-nots. The article says basically New York City is the world's wealthiest city. Bay Area boasts the most billionaires. So we're talking about two places where there's so much money and yet there's so much poverty. The divide, wherever there's these massive amounts of billionaires, there tends to be a great divide. And it shows us that the system is built to help out those who have the assets. That brings me to my point. So what do we need to take advantage of here? It's that during the cycle, as we see the cycles of excess and obviously the reverse, is that we see some assets that do very well, and that tends to be real assets, things that are tangible. But during those times when things get real difficult, whether we're holding on to precious metals and land and other things, we need to be able to actually produce cash flow because we need stuff. We got bills to pay. At the same time, we might lose our employment. Our business might decline. So we need to have cash flow from our passive investments. So keep that in mind. I did several videos that got very few views over the last couple weeks. A whole week, 14 videos of just financial education. Okay, so you definitely want to check those out. I'll put one on the screen right here that I think you should be aware of. Take a look at this if you haven't seen it already. I'll see you tomorrow. Take care.